Fiscal measures. Well, the thing about fiscal measures, which I'll outline a few in a moment, but the danger is, and what should not be done, is to slap on something, call it a green tax, and then do nothing else. If you want to tackle traffic growth, and particularly emissions growth, then you can't just sort of do little bits of fiscal stuff around the edges. So I hear what you say about what are the fiscal measures that matter, but I think abstracting it as a single approach without the kind of land use planning and other measures that would need to go alongside it is quite a dangerous approach. But if you want me to give you a list, I would say on emissions rather than traffic, we need differentiated VED, vehicle excise duty, so that there's a range of about £2,000 between the very top and the lowest emission vehicles. We need to reintroduce the fuel duty escalator, and at a local level, we need parking charges. And again, parking charge escalator running ahead of inflation.
Can I? Yes, I think, Doug, you've forgotten road pricing there. I mean, I maybe haven't.
They've just excluded it.
Oh, have they?
I thought, well, the question
excluded. Oh, right. Okay.
Maybe the next government might review.
No, the next government will not look at road pricing. Road pricing has been kicked off the agenda, unfortunately, which is maybe why we excluded it. But it should be back on the agenda. It is a much better targeted tax than fuel duty, and it taxes the problem, which is it taxes congestion. It can be variable. I mean, Germany already has a nationwide lorry tax system. I mean, it's a flat system, but it shows that technologically there's no barrier to it. The barrier was political, and that's why it got ditched in this country. But it's I think it should be top of the agenda.
Nick, do you want to come in on this?
No.
Greg?
I certainly agree road pricing is off the agenda, I think, for 10 years, frankly. I mean, there's complete opposition to it in the Conservative Party that look like they'll form the next government. I don't see it coming in the following term as being a realistic option. So we've got to look at other things. And one of the key things we've got to do is actually start to balance out the costs of public transport and motoring. And in the last 10, 12 years, the cost of driving has gone up on the DFT's figures by around 15%. Rail travel's gone up by nearly 50%, and bus travel's gone up by nearly 60%. Well, that's just insane if we want to encourage people off of the roads and onto public transport. So the first thing we need to get right is what Christian started with, which is the pricing part of our travel options. I would say the second thing that we need to get right, and we need to get right in the next 5 years, is we need to move away from the very simple measures of tailpipe carbon dioxide emissions to much more complex measures of the full life cycle of the emissions arising from our cars and our other forms of transport. And that's really important because clearly an electric car has no emissions at point of use, but it still needs to be recharged. And it will also have much higher embedded energy in the battery, which takes a lot of energy to actually manufacture it from the precious metals and other materials which are contained within it. So we're going to need to start to look in a much more holistic life cycle way at all forms of transport energy, in exactly the same way that the UK has taken a lead in doing on biofuels, where the Renewable Fuels Agency that Nick heads up is measuring the life cycle emissions of biofuels for all the biofuels coming into the UK, the first scheme of its type in the world.
David, do you want to add anything?
Yes, a couple of comments, particularly around this fiscal issue. Certainly I agree with the list of measures, with perhaps one query on the fuel duty escalator, where that's clearly potentially a problem for essential users or the commercial world, and a cross-channel type problem. And that's interesting because a lot of the success that we must find a way of achieving requires close international collaboration and cooperation, so that you set the same sort of fiscal levers and so that you give the same signals to industry so that they develop products for markets that are not just limited to one small area. So a couple of comments on that. And the other thing is, it seems to me to be absolutely essential that messages from central government be as consistent as possible. So if you are going to have carbon-related VED or parking charges or whatever, then for goodness sake, where there are other fiscal levers, make them consistent. And to me, an obvious example is the Inland Revenue approved mileage rates, which are just sort of set at, in these terms, fairly arbitrary thresholds, and which are applied to lots of people in the population one way and another. But I don't think the link with, are you using a carbon efficient vehicle or a carbon efficient fuel, I don't think that link is made, and it should be.